The most important skill for building a business today isn't better marketing tactics. It's creating a powerful personal brand that connects emotionally with your audience. Think about it. The richest man in the world today got into the position that he's in with his personal brand. The best investor in the world, Warren Buffett, also did the same thing. And Mr. Beast is probably the most watched person in the world because of his personal brand. And as someone who's gotten over 1 million subscribers on YouTube and built 2 7-figure businesses off of my personal brand, I can tell you exactly what to do step by step so that you don't have to waste your time figuring it out on your own. Because once you know how to do that, you can turn ordinary products and services into premium offers that people will gladly pay top dollar for. And that's exactly how I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs transform their YouTube channels and their personal brands into $1 million businesses. And in this guide, I'll show you the exact framework for building a personal brand that generates serious cash. So if you appreciate me making this type of content for you completely free, let me know by gently tapping that like button, and let's jump into it right now. So let's talk about how to build a $1 million personal brand, because people don't just buy products, they buy into people. And let me start by telling you a quick story. A few months ago, I made a quick post. Took me about 15 seconds to write it, and I put it out over a few different social media platforms. And this post was basically saying that for the first time ever, I'm opening up my done-for-you services, where I basically just build people's YouTube channels for them. And immediately I had dozens of people express interest in this. And the result was in a few days, I closed a $120,000 contract. So basically, one tweet, $120,000. And I had a wait list of other people that were interested in getting started too. And it's all because of my personal brand. So by the time someone reaches out to work with me, they're already 90% sold. And you can build this too. You can build a powerful personal brand that connects emotionally with your audience. And one thing that you need to understand about your personal brand is that it has a lot to do with your aura or your vibe. It's kind of like going to a restaurant. If you think of your favorite restaurants that you go to over and over again, they have a certain ambiance to them. Obviously, the food is good and you want to have a consistent experience with the food, but usually the reason you go to the restaurant instead of just ordering it on Uber Eats is because of the aura or the vibe or the ambiance of the restaurant. And you want your personal brand to be the same way. You always want to give off the same aura or vibe. Now you might be thinking, Shane, this sounds pretty woo-woo or wishy-washy. How do I actually do that? Well, we're going to get into that. But first, I want to ask you, when I say Alex Hormozi, what do you feel? Right? What is his vibe? No nonsense, high value business advice. And that's why his book sold over 1 million copies worldwide. Now, does everyone like him? No. There's probably a lot of people that don't like his presentation style, or they think that he's too serious, or he's too boring. And that's totally fine. You don't want everyone to like you. And in fact, if you try to get everyone to like you, chances are no one will really like you. Everyone will just kind of tolerate you. And the moment you step out of line, they'll try to put you back in place. Now, with a celebrity example, when I say Taylor Swift, you don't just think about a musician. Taylor Swift has a certain vibe, a certain aura, where when you think about her, that vibe or that emotion pops up in your brain. She appeals to a lot of teenage or younger women who relate to her because she's so open about drama, writing songs about her ex-boyfriends, and talking about her emotions. And we're going to get deeper into this example a little bit later on. But the big point is when people hear your name, they should feel something specific. And your content should consistently deliver that specific feeling, emotion, aura, vibe, whatever you want to call it. Now, sometimes I go to business conferences, and at the last business conference I went to, I was recognized as the YouTube for busy business owners guy. And there's a reason for that, because I designed it that way. I even called my presentation YouTube for busy business owners. And this was the most attended speech at the entire business conference. And everyone at the conference knew me as the YouTube guy, or more specifically, the YouTube for busy business owners guy. And the thing is I teach a lot of different things, right? On my main channel, I teach people how to get remote jobs. I also teach people how to get educated so that they can get a good job in the first place. Sometimes this involves going to college. A lot of the time it involves actually skipping college. And I also teach things outside of YouTube, like how to do email marketing and landing pages and offer creation, etc. But I chose to brand myself as the YouTube for busy business owners guy because there were over 500 business owners at that conference. And if I tried to tell them that I do like 20 different things, they're not going to remember me for anything. So I chose one thing that I thought was very important to basically say over and over again when people ask me, hey, what do you do? And that was, I help people build their YouTube channels. I'm the YouTube for busy business owners guy. And because of that, everyone remembered me and it was easy for them to talk to other people about me. And the thing is, business conferences aren't that unsimilar to real life. There's billions of people in the world, and you want to be known for one thing because it makes it way easier for people to categorize you, right? We're all well-rounded human beings. We have lots of different things that we've done in the past. We have lots of interests and activities and strengths and weaknesses. But when it comes to personal branding, especially when you begin, you want to be known for one thing. And everyone should be able to describe you in one sentence. And that is what's going to make your brand and your content spread like wildfire. And $1 million personal brand isn't about being everywhere. It's about being unforgettable. So let's talk about how you can make yourself unforgettable. And I'm going to be getting into some really deep stuff that almost nobody talks about here. And this is the stuff that can make you absolutely explode and pass up everyone else in your niche. Hey guys, quick break. I'm in the process of editing this video right now, and I realized that a lot of you are probably thinking, I don't have a website or a landing page or anything like that. Well, the crazy thing is you can make a landing page exactly like this in about 10 minutes with High Level. High Level has all these templates built in. You just pick one, swap out the text, add your own images, and you've got a professional landing page that converts. And it's not just landing pages, you get the whole damn system. Email marketing, SMS, automation, payment processing, all the stuff you need to actually run a business for just $97 a month. And if you use my link in the description and the pinned comment below, you can try it out completely free to start. Seriously, we've been using High Level lately, and before we used High Level, I had to spend well over $1,000 a month on all the different softwares, like the landing page builder, the email marketing software, the call scheduling software, webinar softwares, etc., etc. And Go High Level has it all in one. Plus, their customer service is amazing. So if you're a beginner, I absolutely recommend High Level because you don't have to deal with complicated tech stuff, and it's super easy to use. And I even know people making over $1 million a month that are using High Level. Plus, I've got an exclusive link down the description in the pinned comment below, which will give you a free trial so you can mess around with it without spending a dime. So if you want to try it out, there's a link in the description in the pinned comment below. Now, back to the video. So step one, you want to find your archetype. So I'm going to use the example in this particular case of the make money online niche, right? This is a massive niche. There's thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people participating in it. And there's hundreds of millions, if not billions of people that view content in this niche. And there's basically 4 main archetypes that I see doing incredibly well over and over again. And to be honest, most of my clients are in the make money online niche. So let's go over these 4 archetypes. Now, the first archetype is the luxury and success aura. This is your classic, look at my Lamborghini personal brand. You can think about Tai Lopez, for instance, with this aura. He was one of the first ones to do it on social media. You can see him here in the top left. He's in a private jet. In the top right, that's his classic here in my garage knowledge meme video that he basically blasted out to social media and spent, millions and millions of dollars on. And he also probably made like $50 million on this ad. The bottom left, that's him with a bunch of sport and luxury cars. And then the bottom right, that's him looking at his phone outside of a private jet. Now, he's a really big name, so you can also think of someone like Samuel Anuha, right? Him in the luxury car, him on a jet ski in Dubai, and then him inside and outside of a private jet. Now, I like to call this lizard brain marketing because it basically targets our most primitive desires. And to be fair, some people do this in more of a tasteful way, and others are just really in your face. They just have a bunch of, Rolex watches. All their pictures are in private jets or in super nice cars or in their mansion. And to be honest with you, this is insanely effective. It's actually a little bit sad how effective this type of marketing is. And that's why you see it all over social media. Now, some people use this marketing, but like I said, they do it in a little bit more of a tasteful way. I would say that Iman Gadzhi does this in a bit more of a tasteful way, but he still is flexing, right? He'll say stuff like, I don't really care about these watches. What I really care about is being able to buy my mom a house. But at the end of the day, he is absolutely using this kind of luxury vibe, right? This luxury aura. And that is the archetype that he falls under. And so whether you're doing lizard brain marketing directly or indirectly, it's insanely effective. And to be honest with you, it works very well on B2C audiences, but it even works well on B2B audiences too. Just as an example, Jeremy Haynes is a very popular B2B channel on YouTube. He basically helps people get to $1 million a month with paid ads. And what's on his wrist? Oh, hey, that's a $400,000 Richard Mille. So yeah, it even works with B2B audiences. The second archetype is the freedom travel vibe or the freedom travel aura. And basically, instead of focusing on wealth, they focus focus on lifestyle and freedom. Now, sometimes this can be traveling. Sometimes this can be just, not having to spend that much time on your business and just having a lot of free time so that you can focus on your mental health or your physical health or your family, etc. But this appeals to a lot of people as well, because let's be honest, once you get past, $30,000 to $100,000 a month, pretty much nothing changes about your lifestyle. Unless you want to buy an island or a freaking $100 million yacht or maybe a planet, nothing about your lifestyle is going to change past that point. So a lot of people in both B2C and B2B are attracted to this because in B2C, the reason that they want to make more money is so that they can have more freedom. They want time, location, and financial freedom. And even in B2B audiences, a lot of the time they have enough money and what they want to do is basically just free up their time so that they can spend more time with their family, or they can grow their business more, or they can just take a break and, take a nap every once in a while. So this is another archetype that works very well. An example of this is Mike Vestile. He leaned very heavily into this archetype. He's all around the world. He's super ripped because he has time to work out. He's traveling everywhere while he has an online business. And he even put out a book called The Lazy Man's Guide to Living the Good Life, right? So he really appeals to people who want to make a lot of money, but they don't want to put a lot of effort into it. So this archetype basically sells the dream of escaping the 9-to-5 and living life on your own terms. Or it sells the dream of having a business that, is either crushing it without you or even ideally growing without you while you're not spending all that much time on it. Now, the third archetype is the academic or the scientist. You could also call this the philosopher as well. And in this archetype, they're very analytical and they like to break things down on a clinical level. So an example of this one would be Sam Ovens. Now, I was a huge fan of Sam Ovens back in the day, and I also used School, his platform that he came out with. And I really love how he broke business down almost into a science, right? He even had equations describing, the different aspects of business. Now, this archetype tends to be much more logical, right? They're not appealing nearly as much to emotion, and they basically just focus on the facts, data, and logic. Another example of this would be Alex Hormozi, right? He's very analytical about things. He kind of comes from the perspective of finance because he started off working in consulting and finance. And he kind of comes from the perspective of building a business in such a way where it would be attractive to sell. And this archetype tends to take over in more advanced markets where people are looking for deeper insights. Just as an example, if you look at the fitness niche on YouTube, a lot of the biggest channels such as Jeff Nippard or Jeremy Ethier will oftentimes literally break down scientific papers, and sometimes they even integrate scientists into their content. If you look at the fitness market 10 years ago, it was a whole lot of trust me bro type people. Now, the fourth archetype is the relatable vibe. And the great thing about this archetype is it's something that just about anybody can tap into. Now, this is someone who seems completely normal, and they make you think if they can do it, I can do it too. And they're basically just everyday people who happen to figure something out and they're willing to share, or at least that's how they present themselves. Now, a great example of this one is Molly Kaiser. She basically comes across as just like an everyday, girl who just, happened to stumble upon make money online and how to, sell digital products, and she made a ton of money doing it. Now, in reality, she is a very smart person who, figured out how to do this, but she presents herself as just like the girl next door, just an everyday girl who just happened to, stumble upon how to make money online. And when you watch her content, you come away with a feeling of, if she can do it, I can do it too. Same thing with Monet. In fact, he recorded his first ever cold call, right? Literally the first time he ever tried to cold call anyone. He recorded it and he was going to do it anyways, but he just turned his camera on while he was doing it. And this video got nearly 400,000 views and blew up his channel. Absolutely brilliant. So this is incredibly relatable, right? People who are just starting an SMMA in this case, they would watch this video and they are going to relate to him because it can be incredibly brutal and very scary to get your first few clients. Now you might be thinking, Shane, what is your archetype? Well, I'm a little bit more on the freedom archetype side of things. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, I've been traveling the world for the past 3.5 years, so it makes a lot of sense to do this archetype. And on my main channel, I teach people how to get remote jobs so they can basically have the same life that I have with a remote job. But additionally, I'm the scientist archetype, right? I'm very analytical. I'm very logical about things. I like to break things down into a science. So I basically combine those two archetypes on my channels. Now, on this channel, I'm a little bit more on the scientist archetype side of things, but on my main channel, I'm a little bit more on the lifestyle and travel archetype side. So you need to choose an archetype that aligns with your natural personality. That's the big takeaway here. You can't fake this stuff long term. Your $1 million personal brand has to be built on a foundation of authenticity. And this is the mistake that I see a lot of people making. You know, they'll go and they'll rent a Lamborghini, and maybe they'll even rent like a Rolex watch or just borrow it from a friend. And then they try to put off this vibe vibe like as if they're rich. And most people see right through that. And especially if you're trying to target a B2B audience, it's just not going to work. Plus, you're probably going to make a lot of enemies and get called out doing this. All right. Step 2 is to establish your vibe. And true masters of personal branding that are actually way ahead of anybody on YouTube, celebrities, right? Celebrities have basically paved the way when it comes to personal branding. And, if the best YouTubers are like, I don't know, a 60 out of 100 in personal branding, celebrities are like a 99 out of 100 or 100 out of 100. And I'm going to go over a few examples. So let me ask you, who is this? Chances are almost all of you know exactly who this is, even though you can't see her face. It's Billie Eilish. Now, why did you know this? Well, if you notice, her hair is green and even her clothes have the same vibe. She's got kind of like a green fire vibe. And this is her establishing her brand. Now, this is what she really leaned on when she was first coming out. At this point, she probably has a lot of different hairstyles and she's changed things. But when she was first coming out, when she was first bursting onto the scene and getting a massive amount of traction, this was her brand, right? This was her vibe. And everything about her, from her baggy clothes to her soft-spoken voice to her melancholy music, creates a consistent vibe that's instantly recognizable. Now, in this particular case, this is a visual vibe. So it's like the clothes that you're wearing and your hairstyle. One of the biggest finance YouTubers, for instance, Meet Kevin, he almost always wears a suit in his videos. And at one point, he had green hair. So he was really tapping into this. Another example of this in the social media world is Ninja. Ninja, when he first burst onto the scene in Fortnite and he became literally the #1 Fortnite player in the world, always wore a headband and he always had blue hair that kind of looked like a Super Saiyan. And it was such a recognizable look that people even made memes about it, as well as merch and dolls that they sold online. Some people even bought headbands so that they could look like Ninja. So in this particular case, it's the clothes you wear or your image, but it goes deeper than that. For instance, who is this, right? You might notice that she has different hairstyles in these different photos. So it's not necessarily her hairstyle. And also her clothes seem to be relatively plain, but this is Lana Del Rey. And chances are you also recognized her. Now, if you notice in the left image, she actually has a speaker that looks as if it's from maybe the 1950s, and her hairstyle is also from the 1950s. On the right, it looks like it could come from a similar time period, maybe the 60s or the 70s, but still the same thing applies. It's from a long time ago. And every element, her clothes, her hairstyles, her makeup, her imagery, all reinforce this dreamy, nostalgic persona. Basically, what she's going for here is that sense of nostalgia that you think about when you look at the past. Notice the picture on the right looks like it's taken from an old camera. Now, of course, Lana Del Rey is insanely rich and she probably has some of the smartest and most advanced people in the world working for her. So obviously, they would have access to the newest and best cameras. So why did she choose to use an old camera for this media? Again, it's because she wanted to tap into that old nostalgic vibe. And this is something that's reinforced and permeates across all of her content. Her music, artwork, her clothes, even her public image. And someone on YouTube that reminds me of this is Peter McKinnon. Now, again, YouTubers are not the best at branding. I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see them get way better than they are right now. But whenever you think of Peter McKinnon, you think about the guy who is massively passionate about video and photo. And he wants to get a bunch of other people passionate about it as well. And all of his content reinforces these vibes. Another example is Casey Neistat. His editing is deliberately chaotic, and he makes everyday moments seem epic. And he's kind of like a mad scientist, creative entrepreneur. Oh, and he always wears those same glasses. But it's not just about your imagery or the type of content you make. It's also about your personality and your opinions. Just as an example, who is this? Almost all of you will know that this is Kanye West, and he's mastered what we call the emotional bond. People care intensely about what he does. He almost has like a cult following of people who are obsessed with his music and him. And not only does he make really good music, but he also has extremely strong opinions that make him divisive. He doesn't follow mainstream thinking, for better or worse. And boy, does he piss a lot of people off with this. For instance, South Park has had entire episodes dedicated to him. And controversy can be a big part of your personal brand. In fact, I recommend being somewhat controversial. Now, you don't have to take it as far as Kanye West. He basically takes like every normally held opinion and he goes against it, right? He just goes against the status quo and like whenever he can, essentially. But you do need to stand for something, right? You need to basically stand up and say, hey, there's this thing that everyone believes or it's widely accepted in society, and I think it's wrong. And here's why. Because if you stand for nothing, then you will fall for everything. And we'll go into more on that here in a moment. But instead of being controversial, sometimes you can be vulnerable. For example, who is this? Well, you probably recognize her as Taylor Swift. And what she likes to do is bring people into her personal stories, her heartaches, her triumphs. She treats her music and her art basically like an open diary. And people absolutely love this because by sharing her vulnerabilities, by being authentic and talking about things that she struggled with, talking about her emotions, both the good and the bad, she becomes much more relatable. And despite being a global superstar, she makes her fans feel like she's their personal champion. So by being more authentic and vulnerable and sharing things that you've struggled with, that is a way of building your personal brand, and that's a way of getting people to relate to you. Now, another way of personal branding is just having something that is recognizable. So let's go over one YouTube example. Do you remember who is associated with this image? Chances are, if you've watched YouTube for more than just the last few years, you do. This is PewDiePie, and he has this weird red wavy thing on just about everything, right? His backgrounds often are the red wave. His chairs have the red wave. His energy drink powders that he sells usually have the red wave. And this is a way for you to easily recognize him. Because let's be honest, he kind of just looks like a basic white guy. So there's like hundreds of other creators on the internet that look kind of like him. So in his case, he differentiates himself with this branding. And sometimes this is all you need to do. But you might be thinking, these are celebrities with massive platforms. So how does this apply to you? Well, they weren't always celebrities. So let's talk about how you can do this too. Step 3 is to follow core components of $1 million personal brand. And one is emotional connection. This is the foundation of everything. Human beings at the end of the day are animals, right? And animals follow their instincts and their emotions. And we might be the smartest animals on the planet, but we're still animals. And we're social animals. And the whole reason that social media has gotten so big is because they've tapped into this. And people go on social media because they want to interact or relate with other people. Think about it. You could easily just watch Netflix or turn on the news and you'd have super high production quality. But for some reason, people love to go on YouTube and watch people that have much lower production quality. Many times people actually just record with their iPhones and they don't edit at all. And why is this? Well, because your audience needs to feel like they know you, like they have a relationship with you. And this doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you deliberately share your story, your struggles, and your wins. And basically just show your personality. Because right now, loneliness is an epidemic and people need to feel connection more than ever. And where do they go for that connection? Well, the fastest place to go is to get on their phone or their computer or turn on their TV and log into YouTube or social media. And when they feel this connection with you, it gets them to know, like, and trust you. And it gets them to think that they can do it as well, right? So whatever you're teaching people, whether you're teaching them to get a job or you're teaching them how they can get more clients or teaching them how they can save a bunch of time so they can actually enjoy their life, when they get to know you, they feel like they can do the same thing that you've already been able to do. Look at Joe Rogan. The reason his podcast was so wildly successful is his listeners feel like they're sitting in the room with him, talking about random stuff like aliens or hunting or elk meat or DMT. And they know his dog Marshall, and they know about his struggles with hunting, his martial arts journey, talking about elk meat, and talking about DMT, right? They know so much about him that they almost have inside jokes, almost like you'd have with a friend that you hang out with in real life, right? They know that he's obsessed with elk meat and DMT, for instance, and you kind of poke fun at him for that. And his audience isn't just listening to content, they're spending time with someone they feel they know personally. And it's almost like they're hanging out with their buddy. And next, let's talk about having a strong point of view. A great example of this on social media is Dave Ramsey. Now, you may not agree with everything that Dave Ramsey says. I certainly don't, but he does have very strong points of view, specifically on the topic of debt or credit. He says, don't use credit cards. Or he says stuff like, all debt is bad. And he basically goes on calls with people who have massive amounts of debt, and he tells them how they can get their financial situation figured out. And he puts out the vibe that debt is basically like the plague, and you should avoid it at all costs. Now, the truth is, debt is actually a really good thing in the right situation. Many people have gotten rich by investing in real estate, for instance, and taking out loans to buy the houses. And if you have a business where you put $1 into the business and you get $10 out of the business, you would be dumb to not take out debt. But with that being said, the vast majority of people out there likely shouldn't have credit cards and shouldn't get in debt. And so to his audience, he's actually completely right. And notice how he has clear and strong opinions, right? He's not trying to please everyone. And he pisses off a lot of people. But his strong anti-debt stance has created a loyal following of Ramsey believers. And having a strong point of view means you'll make some people love you and others hate you. And that's exactly what you want, right? You want to put yourself in a box. You want people to kind of think of you and categorize you, right? It kind of goes back to the example of being at a business conference or just a conference in general. If you've ever gone to a conference and people ask you what you do and you tell them like 20 different things, they're not going to be able to remember you for anything. You've probably asked other people what they do and they tell you like 20 different things and you have trouble remembering what they do. But if they tell you one thing and they have a very strong point of view about that thing, for instance, I'm the YouTube for busy business owners guy, and I think that YouTube is the best thing ever if you're a business owner, and all business owners should be on YouTube. They're going to remember you for that. And they're going to remember you for the fact that you have a strong point of view on it. And there's also a saying that I've heard many times, and for the most part, it's true. All publicity is good publicity, whether it's good or bad, whether it's positive or negative. And if you think about it, even people who get massive amounts of negative publicity, like Floyd Mayweather, Donald Trump, or Andrew Tate, they end up making a ton of money from it. So for the most part, that saying is true. And a watered down brand that offends no one also excites no one, right? Conor McGregor came into the UFC and he basically doubled the entire business by being controversial, right? One man came into the UFC, he doubled the entire business just by being controversial and just by having strong opinions. And you know what doesn't excite anybody? Corporate social media accounts. They try to be inoffensive and they appeal to everyone. For instance, you've probably seen a bunch of people posting stuff like this. And you probably also see that they get almost no engagement. And think to yourself, when is the last time that you felt passionate about a brand that tries to please everyone? Probably never. And the reason for that is because it feels too shallow. And really, if everyone is doing one thing, generally speaking, it's a good idea to try to do the opposite thing. So when everyone is zigging, it's a good idea to zag. And I'm not telling you to lie about anything or to change your personality, but just think of things that you believe that other people don't think are true and talk about those things. Think of things that you believe that go against the establishment or the status quo and talk about those things. However, don't take this too far, right? I don't want anyone to like sue me for this video because they did something absolutely crazy. Like, use common sense here. Let's talk about the ability to add value to anything you associate with. So can you take a basic product, put your name on it, and instantly make it more valuable? Well, if you have a personal brand, that's exactly what you can do. Just as an example, Gary Vaynerchuk can take a $5 bottle of wine and sell it for $55 because of his brand. The Rock can start a tequila company that's not that much different than any other tequila company out there, and then sell it for over $1 billion because of his brand. And Alex Hormozi has big companies that are banging at his door, basically begging him to invest in their company at very favorable prices because of his brand. And Hermes can sell purses that probably cost them like $5 or $10 to produce for thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars because of their brand. And in the case of Gary Vaynerchuk, for instance, the only real difference between the $5 and the $55 is his brand. It's pure brand equity. And when you see this, you're going to start noticing it everywhere. Just as an example, Apple iPhones don't even make their own cameras. iPhone has the brand, right? Everyone knows them as the premium brand. People line up for hours, sometimes even days, in order to get the newest iPhone. And one of the main reasons why they buy the iPhones is because they have incredible cameras. But they don't even make their own cameras. They outsource that to Sony. But they're able to sell it for far more than a random camera creation company could. And it's all because of their brand. Just as an example, with MacBooks, you could get the exact same specs that are inside of a MacBook with a PC for probably 1/2 or 1/3 or even 1/4 the price. But why are they able to sell it for more? Because of their brand, right? Brand is everything. Brand is what gives you the ability to sell products for far more than they would be worth on a normal market. Another part of building a brand is self-awareness and self-acceptance. Now, going back to the fake private jet example, I talked about how you need to be authentic, right? There's a bunch of influencers in LA that will literally pay like $100 to take fake pictures with a fake private jet. And it's super cringe. And you really have to ask yourself, why are they doing this? Like, who are they trying to impress? But in order to be authentic, first, you have to be self-aware and you have to accept who you really are. And the most compelling personal brands know exactly who they are and they fully accept themselves. And this level of authenticity is magnetic because it's so rare. Just to give a great example of this in the self-help book world, Mark Manson came out with this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a And he basically built his entire brand around brutal self-awareness and brutal honesty. And this self-acceptance has resonated so strongly that his book has sold almost 20 million copies worldwide. And another part of this is transparency and vulnerability. People connect more with your struggles than your successes. That's just the truth. Because when you tell people about your struggles, many people out there have had the same exact struggles. And they almost see you like a brother in arms, like you guys went to war together against the same enemy. Just think of Pixar, for example. They're some of the best storytellers in the entire world, and they have 22 rules for storytelling. And the very first rule is audiences admire characters for their attempts more than their accomplishments. So don't just share your wins. Share your failures and how you overcame them as well. Now, storytelling is one of the most powerful methods to teach. It's one of the most powerful methods to make people feel emotions. And it's one of the most powerful methods to make people relate to you and remember what you're telling them. Every time you tell someone a story, it's basically like you're creating a little emotional real estate inside of their head. Like they probably can't forget a story. It's almost like you trying to not think about purple elephants, right? You're definitely thinking about a purple elephant right now. It's the same thing with a story. Whenever you start telling a story, people can't help but visualize the story in their head. And so people might forget everything else that you said in your entire video, but they'll remember the story that you told. Another part is a powerful origin story. Every great personal brand has a narrative about where they came from and what shaped them. And there's always a moment, an inflection point where everything changed for them. And this story helps people understand what you do and why you do it. A great example of this is Sarah Blakely, who is the founder of Spanx. Now, she talked about how she failed the LSAT twice and she ended up selling fax machines door to door. Not the most glamorous job in the world. And by the way, if you're not aware, the LSAT is the law school admissions test. So she basically failed to get into law school twice. And then she had to sell fax machines for 7 years before she hit it big. And she tells the story of how she cut out the feet of her pantyhose to create a prototype for what would become Spanx. And then she started the company by herself and grew it massively, and then exited the company for over $1 billion. And when women buy her products, they're not just buying shapewear. They're buying into Sarah's story of female entrepreneurship and determination. And when people buy PewDiePie's powdered energy drink, they're not just buying a powdered energy drink. They're buying into his story of uploading every single day for 10 years to become the biggest YouTuber in the world. And especially with info products, when people buy your info product, your course, your coaching program, your agency, or your service, they're not just buying an info product. They're buying your story of how you were able to overcome the same problem that they have right now with the mechanism, which is your info product, of how you were able to overcome the problem. So those were the core components. Now let's move over to the framework for building your personal brand. Step 1 is to identify your strengths and unique story elements. What are you naturally good at? What experiences have shaped you? What hardships have you overcome? And I literally want you to write all of this down. Now, there's a couple different exercises you can do, and I highly recommend, if you haven't done this already, just go ahead and pause the video and do it. I literally want you to write down 10 things that you think you're naturally good at. Then I want you to write down 10 things that you spent a ton of time doing. For instance, maybe when you were a kid, your parents made you practice piano for a long amount of time. Or maybe when you were a kid, you played video games for a long time because you wanted to. Then I want you to write down another 10 things that people have consistently told you that you're good at, right? Maybe people have told you, oh, you're really good at organizing things, or you're really good at math. Or they might not even be things that you're good at, maybe just things that people have told you over and over again, like you're scatterbrained or you can't sit still. Then I want you to write down 5 experiences that you think have shaped who you are. And then I want you to write down at least 5 hardships that you've overcome. And finally, a second exercise is to literally just write out your entire life story in order. Now, you don't have to get too deep at this time, and chances are you're going to kind of go back in your life story and think of things that you forgot. You can also ask people like your mom, your dad, your sister, friends, etc., and they can help you fill these things in too. But having this life story just mapped out in order is super helpful for building your personal brand, and it's also just really empowering. I hate using that word, but honestly, it really is, because it's really going to help you understand who you are, what you stand for, and why you are the way that you are. So just as a few examples, at age 13, my father and I ended up homeless on the streets of Lawrence, Kansas. And even before that, we were living in Section 8 housing, trailer parks, dingy basements, etc. So basically, I grew up super poor. And because of that, I was absolutely determined to not be poor. Like, I was going to not be poor one way or another. It was kind of like 50 cents get rich or die trying. Except at the time, I didn't necessarily want to get rich. I just wanted to get a good job. And if you look at my content on my main channel, I talk about how to get remote jobs. And you can see how this experience shaped my personality, my opinions, my convictions, my philosophies, etc. At age 17, I got into a truck accident that destroyed my athletic dreams and forced me to find a new path, right? Because I thought that I was going to get a football scholarship and that's how I was going to pay for college. But I was able to overcome this and I started focusing on what career I should go into. And of course, all my teachers and basically all of society told me that I should get a good job like becoming a pharmacist. And one big thing is it was building a pharmacy career only to realize that I was trapped in the wrong life that was one of my biggest realizations. It was kind of like escaping the fryer pan and then just falling right into the fire. Because now I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. I didn't really have much money because I had to pay off my debt, which was going to take like 10 years or more. And I didn't have free time and I was more unhappy than ever. So what did I do? I figured out how to work online. And working online completely changed the game for me. And then I decided to teach other people how they can make money online as well. And that's how I grew my first channel. Hey guys, quick break. I'm in the process of editing this video right now, and I realized that a lot of you are probably thinking, I don't have a website or a landing page or anything like that. Well, the crazy thing is you can make a landing page exactly like this in about 10 minutes with High Level. High Level has all these templates built in. You just pick one, swap out the text, add your own images, and you've got a professional landing page that converts. And it's not just landing pages, you get the whole damn system. Email marketing, SMS, automation, payment processing, all the stuff you need to actually run a business for just $97 a month. And if you use my link in the description and the pinned comment below, you can try it out completely free to start. Seriously, we've been using High Level lately, and before we used High Level, I had to spend well over $1,000 a month on all the different softwares, like the landing page builder, the email marketing software, the call scheduling software, webinar softwares, etc., etc. And Go High Level has it all in one. Plus, their customer service is amazing. So if you're a beginner, I absolutely recommend High Level because you don't have to deal with complicated tech stuff, and it's super easy to use. And I even know people making over $1 million a month that are using High Level. Plus, I've got an exclusive link down the description in the pinned comment below, which will give you a free trial so you can mess around with it without spending a dime. So if you want to try it out, there's a link in the description and the pinned comment below. Now, back to the video. So after you've figured out who you are, what your story is, and what you stand for, you want to select your archetype and define your vibe. And I have a question for you. Which of the archetypes that we discussed feels most authentic to you? Go ahead and write it down. And don't try to force yourself into a mold that doesn't fit. I've never been the type of person that shows stuff off. So even if I do have nice watches or a nice car, I don't really show that off very much. Now, by the way, things can change in the future. You can always grow into a different person. So you can always change your archetype down the line. So don't feel like you're stuck in this archetype forever. But some things to think about is, what emotions do you want people to feel when they encounter your brand? What visual aesthetic represents you? What language patterns will you use? And what will your content feel like? Right. So when it comes to the emotions that you want people to feel when they encounter your brand, do you want people to feel motivated? Do you want people to feel like they kind of just discovered an indie band that nobody else knows about? Kind of like a hipster? Do you want people to feel like your content is a little bit anti-establishment and controversial? Do you want people to feel like they can trust you because you bring data to the table and you go over studies, right? What emotions do you want people to feel? Also, what visual aesthetic represents you? For instance, on my main channel, I would almost always wear a black shirt. In fact, I wore pretty much the same black shirt for probably hundreds of videos in a row. Don't worry, I had different pairs of the same shirt. And I'm not the only one. For instance, Penguin Zero almost always wears a white shirt on his channel. And usually he wears a backwards cap as well. And he makes pretty basic, relatively unedited content. On the other end of the spectrum, you could have lots of animations on your video with super fancy cameras and really advanced script writing and storyboarding. If that's your vibe, that's totally fine. But think about what visual aesthetic represents you. So just as an example, in my background, I have red and blue lights. And the reason for that is because my videographer and I are both big fans of Star Wars. Also on this side, if you look at the second angle, I have chess pieces. Why? Because I like to play chess. And I like to approach business in a methodical, tactical, strategic way. Also, what language patterns will you use? Just as an example of this, a lot of politicians use very simple language. And the reason for this is because they want to appeal to a mass market audience. They want everyone to be able to understand them, all the way from people with, 80 IQ who are uneducated to people who have 180 IQ. So just to give an example from both sides of the spectrum, Obama had a very simple campaign that can all be represented started with one word, which is change. And this was massively effective. And in Trump's case, and he'll say things like, instead of saying lawyer, he'll say law guy, right? These are some exact quotes from him. I have a guy who's a great real estate guy. The law guy said it's all good. I talked to a tax guy, smartest guy. We've got the best deal guy in the world. My builder guy did an incredible job, right? These are all exact quotes from him. You can see here he uses incredibly simple language. And there's a reason for that, because it appeals to a mass market of people. Anyone can understand his language. And you might be thinking, well, Shane, my audience is super smart, so I'm going to use complex language. Well, Hemingway would disagree with you. And I think a lot of smart people would agree that Hemingway is one of the greatest writers of all time. And he was famous for using the simplest language possible in his books. So do you want to be known as someone who's extremely academic, like the channel Veritasium? Or do you want to be known as someone who's extremely motivational, like Tony Robbins? A lot of this is going to come down to the language patterns that you use. And also, what will your content feel like? I think that's what it really comes down to. Like all these other things that we're talking about, it leads to the question, what does your content feel like? And you really want to think of just being like an internet friend, right? There's certain friends that you go to hang out with and you think like, yeah, this person would be fun to party with, to go out to the bar with. There's other friends that you hang out with and you're thinking, you know what? If I ever want to have a deep conversation about something, this person would be the person to go to. And there's other friends that you hang out with that you'd think, if I ever got in a bad situation, I went through a breakup, this is the person that I would go to. Why do you feel that way about them? It's basically their personal brand. It's the aura that they have. It's the vibe that they give off whenever you're around them. So think about that. What is your content going to feel like when people consume it? And by the way, I recommend writing all of these things down. And if you're not sure about these things, just think of channels that you like watching yourself and write those channels down instead. And then analyze them further. Like think of the language patterns they use, the visual aesthetic that they use, and generally speaking, how their content feels when you watch it. Does it feel like a boring professor talking to you? Does it feel like a friend who's just trying to give you good advice? Or maybe it feels like a grandpa who's just sharing wisdom. Write these things down. Next is creating your distinct visual and verbal identity. So from how you dress to how you speak to the colors and fonts that you use in your content. Remember, you want people to recognize you from 30 feet away or just from your silhouette. Now, again, you don't have to nail every single one of these. A lot of the time, it just takes one of these things in order for you to stand out. But notice with Alex Hormozi, for instance, he almost always wears the hat that says acquisition.com on it. And oftentimes he wears the nasal strip on his nose, the flannel shirt, and of course, let's not forget about the jorts and the Crocs. For Iman Gadzhi, he dresses like old money, right? He wears really nice watches, but he almost never wears branded clothing. And this is basically the way that old money dresses as well. Whereas new money, a lot of the time they're going to be wearing branded clothing, they're very flashy, and they want you to know that they have money. Now, people that are rich and people who have old money recognize the brands of other people without actually having to see the brand. And they're way less flashy, right? So that's Iman's vibe. His vibe is old money. As mentioned before, Casey Neistat has the glasses. Another really good example is Einstein with his crazy hair and his tongue sticking out and his mustache. And if you don't like thinking about real life, think about it like a video game, right? You're basically designing your character. One of my favorite video games, for instance, is Final Fantasy. And you can pretty much tell which character it is from like 30 feet away, even if you can't see their face. And usually that's because of their hairstyle and their clothes. And the people who create these characters definitely do that on purpose, right? If you played Final Fantasy, you can pretty much tell the difference between Cloud and Tifa and Titus or Titus from 30 feet away, even if you can't see their face. Another example is Dr. Gordon Freeman in Half-Life. He looks like a pretty average guy, but the black rimmed glasses make him stand out. So yeah, really put some thought into this and see how you can differentiate yourself. Next is develop consistent content that reinforces your brand. Your content isn't about providing information. It's about communicating your perspective and personality. And every piece of content should strengthen your audience's understanding of who you are and what you stand for, right? So everyone knows that I think every business owner on the planet, especially coaches, consultants, online service providers, and agency owners should be on YouTube. Additionally, I think that YouTubers that have a lot of subscribers, but they're not making enough money, need to start treating YouTube like a business. They need to systemize things so they're not spending all their time making content, and they need to figure out how to effectively monetize their content. And I talk about this stuff all the time on this channel. Next, you want to build a community around shared values and enemies. Now, defining what you're against is just as important important as defining what you're for. So what are the common enemies that you and your audience can rally against? For me, one enemy is the traditional education system that saddles people with debt without preparing them for the real world. And a lot of people agree with me on this. So many people out there have gone to college and they've gotten a useless degree that didn't help them to get a good job. And all it did was just saddle them with a massive amount of debt. Or maybe they didn't do it themselves, but it happened to someone that they care about. And some YouTubers, like Iman Ghazi, for instance, take this quite literally when he talks about the puppet masters, for instance, which is basically the people who own big businesses and the politicians and the people who control the economy out there that basically rig the game against ordinary people. And then step 5 is to monetize, right? Because your personal brand is not going to be sustainable if you're not making money from it. And one way to look at this is digital products that align with your brand. So Marie Forleo, for instance, she built her online school called B School, and the program sells out year after year because it's a natural extension of her personal brand. Second could be coaching and consulting services. So Ramit Sethi, for instance, he's built multiple 7-figure coaching programs based on his personal brand, right? Sometimes they start off as courses, but he also has coaching options, and it's all about living your rich life today. Third is brand partnerships and sponsorships. This one's quite common. So I think everyone knows about sponsorships and everyone knows about brand partnerships, but one way a lot of people are doing this is they're actually partnering with businesses and they're becoming co-owners of the business, just like Logan Paul and KSI both own Prime, and it's a competitor to Gatorade. An example of me doing this is my partnership with Coursera. I've done a bunch of sponsorships with them and it's been great for me, Coursera, and my audience. You can also create premium experiences. So Tony Robbins, for instance, he has a bunch of live events that people pay to attend. For instance, people pay tons of money to get to attend an exclusive experience with Tony and his wife, Sage Robbins, and you get to be in Tony's presence, connecting with his community and getting personalized insights. Another one is licensing your brand to physical products. So a great example of this is George Foreman. Rest in peace, George, absolute legend. And he created the Foreman Grill, and he made over $200 million from licensing his name to the George Foreman Grill. So he was basically one of the first people to do this. And that's the power of personal brand licensing when done right. And remember, your personal brand isn't just about how you present yourself. It's about the emotional response that you create in your audience. And one thing to note about this grill is George Foreman is obviously a very masculine guy, right? He was a world heavyweight champion in boxing. And grilling steak is kind of like a stereotypically masculine thing to do. A lot of dads like to grill steaks for their family, for instance, in the backyard. So try to think of which physical products would actually work with your brand or your vibe. And that's really the power of personal brand licensing when done right. The truth is, there's not that much that's special about this grill. It's a pretty basic grill. But the fact that George Foreman, the super masculine heavyweight world champion, sold it is what made it so popular. And remember, your personal brand isn't just about how you present yourself. It's about the emotional response that you create in your audience. And there's a great quote that relates to this, and it's basically, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And this is by Maya Angelou. And this basically summarizes the emotional component of personal branding, right? People will not forget how you made them feel. They might forget everything you said in the video, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And this kind of goes back to the thing that I talked about when it comes to storytelling. When you tell people stories, they're going to remember that. It's going to make them feel a certain way. And that's why it's such a powerful thing to do. Plus, it actually helps people to remember the lessons that you taught them, because they might forget every single word that you said in the video, but they'll remember the way the video made them feel, and they'll remember the stories in the video. And great personal brands know who they are, who they serve, and the transformation that they provide for the audience. And that's another really key thing to hit on is, especially if you're an educational YouTuber, you're not selling information. You are selling transformations. Someone has a problem, they're in a certain place, and you're helping them solve that problem and get to wherever the place is that they want to be. You're helping them get from Hell Island to Heaven Island. And that is a transformation. The information is just the vehicle to get to that transformation that they want. And everyone in the world has a current situation and a desired situation. And when you educate people and when you provide that information to them, you are transforming their lives. And you really need to take that seriously. And taking your personal brand seriously is what's going to make them buy into you and buy into your vehicle and your mechanism that you are going to use to help them achieve that transformation. So you really need to take this stuff seriously, because it's not just going to help you, it's going to help your audience and your clients as well. Now, if you want help to take your personal brand brand to the next level. I've helped a bunch of people do this. I've actually helped nearly 20 people get to 7 figures a year, and I've helped about 8 people get to 8 figures a year now using their personal brands. So if you want to get there faster and you want to know what the absolute pros are doing, plus be in a community of people that have already done it, then go ahead and book a demo call with me down in the description and the pinned comment below. In this demo call, we will talk about your current situation, your desired situation. We'll make a plan on how we can get you to that desired situation, and we'll see if we're a good fit to work together or not. So it's a no pressure call. Check it out down in the description and the pinned comment below. And my team and I look forward to talking with you. And also check out this video on how you can get your personal brand to 100K per month by clicking right here.